Well, hello. Every gal needs a cowboy hat.
Scanning the room, you look for a familiar face. Everyone is a stranger. Your heart's racing, you feel nauseous. New plan. You meet 4 new people. Okay, 3. 2? You can handle 2. And then you think, I hate this. This just feels so fake. And before you talk to even 1 new person, you're looking for the nearest exit.
Okay. Crazy. Yo, who invited this chick?
My heart races when I walk into a room full of strangers too. Except it's not anxiety, it's excitement. I'm not thinking networking quota. I'm thinking, look at all these stories. And I get so pumped about talking to people that I don't know.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Well, hello, everyone. Good morning if you're in Eastern Standard Time, and good afternoon, good evening, or if we have other people listening and watching. Well, today we have a great guest, and to start off, my name is Gail Robertson, and I am the Chief Curiosity Officer at Gail Now. This is my business where I help companies, specifically in manufacturing, help to show up in the world by telling their story and sharing all of the good things that, that they have to share. And today, very excited because we have someone who definitely knows how to show up in the world. She is the new president of Canadian Association of Moldmakers and also Automate Canada. She has an amazing history, and we're going to be talking about some cool things coming up with both organizations, and including, so you want to stay tuned to hear more about the details about some of the free training that's coming up for those in manufacturing, specifically to learn about how they can use the export and global markets more effectively using digital. So you'll want to stay tuned and hear details about that, because Jeanine is going to be sharing some of those tips, as well as, well, we might have a little fun too along the way. And forewarned, there may be some outbreak singing at times. Okay. Welcome, Jeanine.
Hi, Gail. Hi, everybody.
Woohoo! Welcome. This is exciting to have you on today. Now, we have done some work together, and I am excited to have you here because I know we've invited some people in the manufacturing world. And as the new president, there's been some exciting things that have happened. So why don't we start off with what are some of the new things that that you're bringing into the Canadian Association of Moldmakers and Automate Canada? We'll start there.
Well, that's a really good question, and one that I actually hadn't anticipated you saying or asking. What's new? I think anytime you bring somebody who's not been a part of the organization to the organization, you always have an opportunity to bring new vision, new life, new ideas to things. And I think the one advantage that I might have is that even though, I've grown up in the industry, I spent a little bit of time outside of industry, although still doing operational related things. And it is always a learning opportunity. So I'm bringing the breadth and depth of everything that I've learned along the way with me. And I think that being outside and coming back in now adds a different flavor and a bit of a different perspective on things.
Okay, that's great. And well, these types of shows, because we are live, and there may be questions that come up that may be a surprise. So
no skeletons in this closet for sure.
I know. So one of the things that is really interesting about your background is the diversity of some of the things that you've been involved with. And so some people may not know a little about that. So maybe you could give some highlights, because I know you started as an apprentice mold maker, which I think is super cool. But then you've managed to take some of these skills. I like to call those transferable skills. So could you maybe give a few highlights, your career highlights of where you started and how you ended up as a president now? Maybe take us along that journey.
Wow. Well, I don't want to, that's
20 words
it's a long journey, let me tell you. I think it's easy to say, let me start with, I was a huge disappointment to my parents. How's that? Back at a time when we weren't as connected as we are today, I think the prospects of opportunities for work or a career, if you will, were a lot more limited than perhaps we have today. And I think, that's a conversation for a different day and a stumbling block, certainly for today's generation. But our limits then, I come from a French Catholic family. So being a nun was really high on the list. And I knew I'd never be able to withstand the vow of silence. So that really was not an option for me. But when I left high school, I joined the military for a little while to, other people backpack to Europe. I joined the Canadian Armed Forces to find myself. And what I found is I did not belong there. And that's no disrespect to people who choose that as career. It is admirable and a wonderful experience for people who are more inclined to, think about routine and need order and those kinds of things. And it's not something that really served me well. Anyway, long story short, I came back. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And here's where the disappointing part comes in. I came back to Windsor, Essex, a bit with my head held, I would say, lower, because at that point I thought I had failed. I wasn't recognizing that, this is a part of a journey. I think when you're young, you have a tendency to look at those early things in life, and if you don't succeed right away, that there's no value. And certainly there was a tremendous amount of value, and I didn't figure that out till later, but I digress. So I think at some point, there's a funny story that goes along with it, and I'll share the details at a later time. But I decided that I wanted to be in a trade, and my dad had always been a part of, my family's always been very handy. And even though my dad worked full time and was a farmer, he also did a lot of woodworking on the side. And I always found that really crafty and kind of cool. And I thought maybe I want to be a carpenter. And I know that he wasn't particularly happy with that choice. And then when I said mold maker, well, forget that. So, the interesting thing is both my parents, even though they might not have seemed supportive at the time, were very supportive with their comments about, how I'm going to manage this. And I think the one thing that comes to mind is both of them saying to me, this is going to be a hard path. If you choose this path, be prepared to put up with some adversity. And of course, they used a lot more colorful language than that, but, entering a man's world. And it's something that actually had not even occurred to me. So that begins the journey. And because I'm naturally curious and I'm naturally a bit gregarious and not afraid to ask questions. I'm a quick learner. I think I took these every opportunity that kind of came my way, and I don't recommend this, but I said yes to everything and figured it out along the way. And not everybody can do that. I just happened to be fortunate and blessed to always be given an opportunity to prove something else that I might be able to learn how to do, and failed along the way, but learned a lot along the way too. That's it's not a very detailed answer, is it?
Well, no, it actually is. And it's interesting. I didn't know that about the armed forces, but I think one of the things that you said that I've heard in a lot of the co-op programs and that is that they encourage students to try out things, because not necessarily just to try things where you will succeed and know, oh, this is what I want. A lot of the really great educators say, no, try co-op, because you also may find out the things you don't want to do. So go through that, test it out. And that's actually not a negative. That's actually a very big positive. So,
yeah, if you can't find a path, sometimes the process of elimination is just as valuable.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yeah. No, that
sure.
is so key. You also said something about say yes and figure it out. And I love that, because in improv, they also say yes and. So if ever someone offers you something, never say no. And I think I fall into that crowd. I'll say yes, and I may need a bit more help with this. Yes, and can you tell me some more information? So I know we're going to circle back to some of the other areas of your career life, because I think that's important. But I want to sort of, for people that may be joining in now and want to hear a bit more about some of the upcoming training that's going to be happening. And this talks about definitely the yes and I thought this was a good time to connect the dots between what you said about, you know, dealing with difficulty, dealing with adversity, also dealing with something you may not want to do, but then you decide to do it because it gets you to the next step. So can you this is sort of a lead into the training that's coming up around digital and social media. And well, let's just address this head on. In manufacturing, there's sometimes some, to put it nicely, some resistance to getting out there on social, to doing digital, because they're so used to the in-person. So I want to turn it over to you now to maybe talk about the context of why you want to do this training.
Yeah, you know what, and that's a nice segue. I think first and foremost, we need to recognize that the world has changed. And I think many people who are not comfortable with technology, and that's not limited to a demographic or an age demographic, I should say, that, you know, it can be universal. But people who haven't been comfortable with technology up until this point were almost shoved into it as a result of the ongoing COVID pandemic and the crisis around getting to where you need to get to. And I know that for members that are in border towns right now, that's been a significant challenge, and not being able to meet with people face to face. But I think as a fundamental human activity, you know, face-to-face meetings, and for people who really thrive on that kind of an environment, this has been a difficult time. And technology, as great as it is, won't replace it, but it's certainly a really good second best, if you will. The second part to that is, I think this is not isolated to the manufacturing community, but certainly in companies across the board, that when we need to tighten our belt, marketing is almost certainly one of the first places that gets cut. And I think one of the reasons for that is that valuating marketing and offering a return on investment for marketing is a difficult challenge. So it's easy to cut it out and feel that there's no impact, just like it's also easy to lack some vision and not do it at all. So, you know, with this particular program that we have coming up, you know, this is meant to not only support those who are, I don't want to call them veterans at this point, but those who are comfortable with technology and want to kick it up a notch, but those who are really experiencing this for the first time. In manufacturing, and particularly small to medium-sized manufacturing, we know there are particular pockets of expertise inside of running a business that you might not have a full-time body sitting in. And I think marketing, communication, sometimes HR are exactly those areas. So with this in mind, the training was created in order to help fill that gap by providing some expertise, but also hearing from the people, good Lord, I don't even know what language I'm speaking today, hearing from the people who we connect with to help us get to different markets, I think has tremendous value, because we're getting the value of what they see that goes right and what they see that goes wrong. And I think that can only help serve us when we're putting together an idea of how we want to perhaps market ourselves or talk about who we are and what our strengths are when we're looking at approaching something new. It could be a new market. It could be a new center, you know, a geological center. It could be a new audience. Just, you know, a lot of us are struggling even with recruiting and getting new people to engage in careers. You know, marketing is a skill that's not isolated to just the sales activity. Maybe that's where we want to go.
You know what, that is very true. Marketing does apply to, you know, it's part of connecting all the pieces of any company. And full disclosure, I will be, my company Gale Now will be doing the training with CAMM, as well as this is being opened up thanks to the work of CAMM to invite other people to come in and take part in this. And yeah, a few things you said, Jeanine, about often you're right. Marketing is often the first thing cut, except if you look at the most successful companies, especially during the pandemic, they've always kept advertising. And, you know, if you look at even Coca-Cola, any of the big name companies, they always still advertise. And you would think, you know, a lot of times people say, why are they still advertising? They're the number one, and they maintain number one by continuing to advertise. So, and not just advertise, but more and more tell their stories.
Yeah.
And I would say that because of the work I've been doing in manufacturing, I have realized that a lot of people have these like fascinating stories to tell, but they don't see them as fascinating. And because I've been a bit of an outsider coming in, I'm amazed and excited by this industry, and especially in mold making. And recently, I was just at a Mirror Mold 21 in Chicago, and when I was outside of the convention world, people would say, "What is mold making?" So I get into explaining, and often I would talk about my phone case and, you know, things that they could identify with. Is that, you know, all of these plastic items, and it's not just in automotive; it's also in every part of our world.
Mm-hmm.
We're using plastic water bottles.
And it's not just plastic, you know, there's molding of metals. There's, you know,
yes.
like the possibilities are endless, particularly now with additive manufacturing and 3D technology. Right. So,
right.
Yeah, to your point, I think, you know, I don't want to speak out of turn here, but, you know, I think what we could say about the manufacturing community at large, and particularly small to medium-sized manufacturers, is that their businesses today are really an extension of who they are as human beings and the evolutionary path they've taken to get to business. And that means they probably came with some expertise in a trade or molding in general, or cutting metal, or whatever those things are. The one thing I see that's universal, particularly with the groups that I'm dealing with, is that a lot of the principal business owners today who are really ridiculously successful are still at their heart tool makers and mold makers and plastics people, and they run their business that way. The important thing to me is, you know, in today's day and age, if we want to get beyond where we are today, we got to do something different, and embracing the fact that you might have a lacking there. And even if it's not you personally, but maybe your business could use a little bit of something, that's it. I think the key here, when you say sharing a story, I think this is exactly it. We take for granted an industry just like every other occupation on the planet. You know, we talk our own language. And when we get together with people that we know are of that same community, we talk that same language. But the community at large doesn't probably know what we're talking about. Think about, okay, I have a sister who was really successful in her career with the military, and she retired, you know, a lieutenant commander, very, very successful 30-year career. But I got to tell you, going to her home for holidays when she was with her friends, I needed a glossary to keep up with the vernacular of what the heck we were talking about with all of the, and the same thing happens in manufacturing and every other sector of business. So we need to remember that when we're telling the story, we need to tell the story from the perspective that people don't know. And particularly when we're talking about emerging markets and new places to do business, we have to go in with the idea that people may not know. So we're part storyteller, we're part teacher. And that is, to me, how you can recognize a strong brand and a strong marketing portfolio. So I think this training is going to help define that for a lot of people who may think that this is a bit of a spooky thing to understand, like there's some voodoo magic involved in marketing and branding. I think this will really bring it to a linear level with some nuts and bolts and, you know, carving out pieces of intel that people can take back and utilize right away. Sorry, that was a really long.
That gives some great insight, Jeanine. And, you know, I call myself a recovering journalist because I was a journalist and what's interesting, whenever people ask me, and I worked in entertainment for a while, so I did interview some, you know, quote, famous people, but the stories that stood with me and have stood the test of time have been about everyday people. And I would go talk to people, and they would often start with, "I don't know why you're going to talk to me. I don't have much to say." And then bam, out would come this like amazing story, because we don't often see the power that of our own story. And that is why you need to often look outside and bring in that marketing person, the content development person as well. So, and you're right, it can be scary, but lots of people are out there doing it. And here's what I want to say: in manufacturing, the bar is set also fairly low. So we'll be having a few guests that come into the panel, and one of my favorite people, David Pustulka, has this line that he says, you know, you want to be the red M&M in the bowl of green M&M. And that is a real key part of, you know, stepping outside. And you don't have to have red hair to do that.
No. We don't want you to make like we don't want people to go dye their hair or, you know, wear some ridiculous outfits, for sure. But, you know, and that's a really great point. I love Damon, and I love everything that he talks about. And he is so on point and key with a lot of things. And I love it when the two of you get together. But more importantly, something you said there strikes me as important. We sometimes don't even recognize our own value and what we can bring to a conversation because we're in a room of people who've already A, heard the story, or B, are just like us. Mm-hmm. I think one of the greatest aha moments that I had as a professional was actually traveling to other centers. And, you know, in North America, although, you know, being a redhead, Gail, you'll be able to identify with this. You know, we do stand out a little bit in most places. We don't really look indigenous anywhere we go. But, you know, a little more prevalent, let's say, in our comfy North American societies. But I remember my first trip to China and my first trip to India, more specifically. I was talk about the red M&M in a bowl of green ones. Holy cow. And so much so that people, you know, want to touch you to make sure you're real, and they want to touch your hair. I take that adage whenever I'm looking at approaching something new or talking to people who don't know the story or who don't know anything about this sector. And it's not only manufacturing as a whole, but, you know, let's add on advanced manufacturing, the people who make the things that make the things. And that's even more of a challenge to explain.
That is so true. And I do want to acknowledge that a few people in the comments, Elizabeth, Liz Hernandez is here. We have Inger, and we also have Kim Tierra. Kim is someone that will be visiting us on one of our panels because she is someone who definitely has some experience in, she said, stories are powerful and make you and your business real and relatable. Absolutely. And for anyone not following Kim, I strongly recommend you follow her. And also, if you're watching today, please drop a comment, say hello. It's nice for us to know who's out there, and we can give a shout out to Jeanine today. So if you're listening, and it's also, here's another thing about doing this type of event. While I'm sure listening to us is like, you know, amazing and all that, in the comments section is also a great place to do networking and connecting, meeting people. When I was at Amerimold, the virtual event last year, that is where I first connected with Harry Moser. I was listening to him at a panel, I made a comment, and we've since now become, I think we're friends. I think that's what I would call ourselves. And he is an amazing advocate for reshoring. And so that's where the comment section can be so helpful. Say hello to the people, you know, connect with one another, meet new people, and you can, Kim says thanks for the plug. Actually, you know, there's so many people that if you follow along and look at people also when it comes to social, who are they following, who are they commenting on, and that's how you can start to expand your network. Jeanine, you and I have had, you know, instead of me, you know, going on and emailing or texting, sometimes I just tag you in a comment on Twitter and connect you up with someone. And that helps to open up doors as well.
Listen, so, I got to tell you, you know, for those of us that are naturally gregarious and like to mix with people, you know, getting in a room full of people and kind of making your way through and making connections seems fairly easy. The beautiful thing about virtual networking right now is that you can do it as an introvert. This is the thing I think that most people are misunderstanding about this, is that you don't need to really put yourself out there if you're not comfortable doing it. And like you said, connecting with people in the comments and just engaging in a one-on-one discussion, or doing the same thing with your other social media feeds, like, you know, LinkedIn or Twitter. You don't need to have a broad audience in order to have impact, and you don't need to have a broad audience in order to find value for yourself or your brand.
Right. And for anyone listening right now and saying, hey, wow, I want to know more about this. There's going to be information in the comment section about, and it's really easy to register. You just have to email info@cam.ca. That is it. Nicole will take care of you, get you signed up. So I encourage everyone to sign up, because we're going to be having panelists from the various trade commission offices, and I've done all my pre-interviews with them, and that's been fascinating to really learn about the simplicity of how to reach out for help. Mm-hmm. And that's another thing. We often overcomplicate things. We overthink. These are when it comes to stepping your toes into something, doing something uncomfortable, doing something outside the norm. So that leads me into, now, Jeanine, do you have a story about where you have, because I think we need to hear people like us, like people think, oh, well, yeah, you can do it. It's easy for you, or you're outgoing. And, but we all have done things that are uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. Even myself, it's limited. But Jeanine, tell me about maybe a time that, because I don't think you were always the most, would that be accurate to say you were the most comfortable being on video and doing social media and
yeah, I'm still not. I really am still not. I mean, I think I have, I'm an extrovert with some introverted tendencies, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. I really like to engage with people, and I love, when I get to go to conventions and talk to people, but I'm not necessarily comfortable being the center of attention. And that will be something that I struggle with, but I also recognize that it is a key skill that I need to have whenever I'm leading people. And this goes back to maybe some fundamental things that I learned about that. I remember being a junior supervisor at General Motors. And, when you're a junior supervisor at General Motors and you're relatively young by comparison to the people that you're leading and instructing for the day, and, they have longstanding careers and, well-adopted behaviors, et cetera, it occurred to me at some point that I set the tone for the people that I interact with. It's my responsibility then to decide. We hear a lot about a game face. I don't want to call it a game face as much as I want to call it a conscious recognition that if I'm going to rise to a position of influence, and it doesn't have to be leadership, but of influence, I set the tone for what's going to happen next. And if I come in pessimistic, negative, worried about all of life's traumas in the wake of now coming to work, and then having, instead of, we talk a lot about a grateful heart at this point in our lives, right, Gail? Like, we're very grateful. And when you're young, it's a little more challenging and something that you probably don't talk or think about very much. But, in knowing that I was here and I had, exceptional people who with exceptional skills that were willing to do the work and were looking forward to accomplishing the task for the day. And I used that as my momentum. That was one way to talk about showing up. But it's also something I wasn't always comfortable doing, and I wasn't always in the right frame of mind. So I remember parking my car lots of days and going, I don't think I can do this. In fact, one of the general managers that I worked for used to like to tell a story that for at least the first 2 months on the job, I would go into her office after my shift and I would cry, and like I would have all of this anxiety and angst, and I don't think I can do this, la 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 la, and she would talk me off the ledge, and she said, and you would leave my office still with tears in your eyes. Okay, I'll see you tomorrow. So, we all have those. There's lots of days we don't even want to get out of bed in this post-pandemic world that we're in. Life has a way of creeping in, but use it to your advantage, right? Sometimes it's okay to even ask permission of the people that you're surrounding yourself with. I'm having a really tough time. And so if I'm distracted or I'm seeming curt today, please don't take it personally. Those are ways that we can manage that. So I'm going off on a stream here, Gail. You need to.
Well, that was actually a great story because I think a lot of people may look and go, they wouldn't expect that of you, right? And yet that to me is what people need to hear, is that we may look like everything is put together sometimes out on
Not
social.
even close.
And it's okay. The other thing is, it's okay. You know what? I think it was a Wayne Gretzky quote. Oh yeah, you know that the legendary quote. You know, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Yeah.
And you know, the most successful people fail the most. When I look back at all the things, I'm so grateful for when I drop the ball. And every time now, when I make a mistake or drop the ball, I'm like, okay, we've talked about this. I step back and go, what do I learn from this? And the same thing that will happen with social. You're going, like when I first started on Twitter, man, I didn't even know I had tags. I had made these mistakes, but then like anything, once you get on a roll, now I don't suggest Twitter for everybody. What I do suggest for everyone though is LinkedIn, especially people listening today. If you're in manufacturing, if you're going to start anywhere, start with your LinkedIn profile and get that up to date, do some basics, and accept that, you know what, I think the biggest fear that people have is, you know, they're going to look silly. They're going to like, and
Oh yeah.
and you know what, you might, but believe me, I was just at a trade show where I dressed in this like racing gear outfit and that, and I had to like walk across the street in this race gear. And now I'm a little different. I know that. So, but I remember early on doing some of those things. It was a little nerve-wracking, but then I realized people, you know, faces light up because I think everybody secretly wants to do those things. So when they see someone doing something kind of crazier, they appreciate it.
Yeah,
And
I think so too. I think so too.
Yeah.
And I think I got a piece of advice, like when I was really young, that said, you know, okay, stop for a second and think about how neurotic you're being about what other people are thinking about you. Guess what? They're not thinking about you because they're having exactly the same feelings you're having. They're all wrapped up in what other people are thinking about them. And now that helps me overcome, you know, going back to this idea of being online or being exposed or being vulnerable or being in front of the camera, or more importantly, leading an organization, which I think has great potential to influence the future here. And that's something that I'm taking with great pride, but also with great intensity. You know, stop worrying about what other people are thinking. We all suffer from anxiety about how we're going to look or how we're going to appear. And guess what? None of us is infallible. We all make mistakes. It is your attitude beyond that, right? It's show up. You might be surprised by the results and you might not be, but that's not a reason to not do it again.
Yeah, that is, you know what, the showing up part, and obviously that's part of my brand. What I encourage people is to show up. And I actually
now you show up all the time, like in costume. Like, and I applaud you for
costume. But when I teach other people, I said, first of all, there's a 3 steps: sign up, suit up, and show up. And the reason I did those 3 steps is because the show up, you can show up, but if you haven't done the preparation work, then you may not have as much success. So the signing up is a lot about mindset. You have to first believe in it. Then the suit up is, you know, doing your research and getting prepared. And then finally is to show up. And as Kim says, being uncomfortable is where we experience growth, both personally and professionally.
And weirdly, we don't even have to acknowledge that we're experiencing growth. It's happening. It's just happening because there's, you know, you're either going to rise from whatever adversity you face or you're going to fail. But either way, you're learning a lesson.
Yeah, you are definitely by doing that and stepping. I know Inger, who I do work with, talks about, you know, stepping outside your comfort zone. And she's a great example of someone who did not want to do video, hated video, and now has her own show. She's doing a podcast. So, and she's had success. Now what's happening is she's having all of these contacts come to her. So it does work. It does make a difference. And it's, yeah, you just got to decide to start somewhere. I will say this, that a lot of times, again, in manufacturing, and when I ask people, I said, are you on LinkedIn? Or do you watch YouTube? And they're like, yeah. And I said, okay, you can be a consumer or a producer. And if you're only a consumer, guess what? You will be joining a lot of maybe your customers and even some of your competition. But once you start becoming a producer, now you're starting to step ahead of your competition and you're going to get in front of your customers, because everybody is using, so it's very few people would say they're not using any social media. It's rare that you're going to find people that aren't, because I'm talking about YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook. You can name all the ones. Everybody to some extent is having some connection to that. And I myself, one of the areas that I decided to tap into was TikTok. Now, TikTok is, I use that because that was a bit outside my comfort zone. I'm still feeling weird. I was in a manufacturing group recently and I mentioned this and they're like, oh, what's your handle? I'm like, whoa, no, wait a minute. I don't know if I want
my handle.
people.
Good Lord. Let's all be CB operators again. We all have handles. Good Lord, Gail. We're going backward.
So people want to know, but I started to feel embarrassed. Like, well, I don't know if I want you to see my TikTok, right? But anyways,
hey, listen, when you put it out there, you must have subconsciously wanted somebody to see it, even if it's just to prove that you've overcome your own fear. Yes,
it was. And I actually see Jim Fuse is here. He's saying hello. And Jim is does some show producing with me as well. He's going to be involved with some of the upcoming training in the background, helping with making sure that, and we're going to start to, I know, summarize here because we do want to also mention that, I do want to mention too, and I'm going to put the link, there was a great podcast by Greg Layson from Automotive News that did a podcast with you. So I recommend people listen to that to learn a bit more about your background. And we're going to be putting some more information in the comments about the upcoming training, signing up, and then showing up, because that is where people are going to be able to start learning about how to be a producer and start going toe to toe with competition. Because if you look in your field, your competition is eating your lunch if you're not stepping out and being a producer. And there's not you don't have to make big productions. There is so much you can do. This cell phone can take videos, can take photos that are like, you always have a camera with you. Take some photos, take some selfies, take some video clips, and start posting.
And again, you don't even have to make it about you. If you want to just share the experiences that you're having, like look at, you see people do this a lot on Instagram and Twitter, right? They look at this awesome cake I'm having. Like, you're not really talking about you, but at the same time, you're sharing the experience. I mean, those are super cool things that, people can take advantage of. And if it's easier for you to start there, then start there. Everybody needs a place to start. I think if there's one lesson to learn, even, whether it's career guidance or learning a new skill, it's not a place to end. It's a place to start. And you only are going to get better as you practice. My mom is right now talking in my head because I feel like I'm saying all the expressions that she said to me. And, now it's all making sense. Practice, practice, practice. It's like anything else in life. It's a skill. And if you don't use it, the skill doesn't get better. If you don't use it, it doesn't grow. If you don't use it, you'll lose it in some cases. So I love the fact that, one of the things about you, Gail, is that, you use curiosity as a skill. And I remember you and I having this discussion fairly recently is, let's go back to this point that we're making about feeling vulnerable and exposed. Sometimes we don't need to worry about that as much. If we change the conversation also in our head to saying, instead of I did something wrong, what did I learn from that situation? And when I'm reluctant to make a comment, but I want to say something, maybe not making a comment is the best thing to go. Instead, change it to asking a question. So these are all tips and tricks. I think that, as you and I continue to work together, as, your brand grows and you continue to do these shows, there's lots of topics here that we could take just one step below and go a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper to talk about.
Yes. And there is many opportunities to meet people too. So beyond, part of the training will be having access to some of the trade commission people that make them, these are real people that are going to be talking and giving some tips and telling some stories. Then we're going to hear from some of the people in manufacturing and marketing. And this is really key because these aren't people only that understand about B2C in the consumer world. These are going to be people that have experience in manufacturing and how to use the various marketing tools. And then we're going to have a virtual networking because I believe sometimes show, don't just tell. We need to really experience it, and we need to, there'll be some bumps along the way, and we'll have some laughs. There may be some.
Yeah, your bumps are always funny. Like, let's face it, it's part training, part comedy show. And I think, that's unfortunate when you and I get together. I think that's what some people are expecting. It's just what happens when redheads get together. We don't find people in our own tribe very often, so we need to celebrate.
We do, and we need to. You will be guesting on a future TikTok, and anybody else wants to guest with me on a TikTok, let me know, because there's some fun over there, and that's where each platform you can. And here's the thing: we're not going to be teaching about TikTok during the training. We may touch upon it as an example, but I always tell people when I'm in training is that find your place that you're going to post the most, because there's no sense saying, if maybe they love Facebook. If you love Facebook, then use Facebook to its full advantage. But if you're not sure where to start, I always say start with LinkedIn is a good place. So we'll be
and listen, the advice is universal. Start with what you know and continue to push yourself a little beyond that every day or every other day, or whatever frequency you think you can manage.
Now, is there going to be an appearance before we sign off by Duke? Is Duke nearby? Is Duke going to say hello?
No, he apparently got his living. For those who don't know, Duke is a legend in his own mind. And in our house, he is basically the cat version of me. So anybody who has unfortunately spent some time on Zoom calls and team meetings, etc., has been introduced to Duke every once in a while as he walks across my screen because he's needing some attention. So I need to find a cat-free zone in the house, and I haven't quite figured that out yet. I might need to move, actually. Maybe just let him have this place. I don't know.
Well, Jeanine, thank you. Thank you for showing up and for bringing, we didn't get into as much of this, but again, there's a podcast where you can listen and hear more about Jeanine's background, also in the cannabis industry.
Government, cannabis, healthcare, manufacturing in all sectors. Yeah, it's been a wild ride, and I loved every minute of it. But I'll leave you all with this. The one thing that we don't talk about in any place, and I think the statute of limitations is run out now. I can tell you, I once got a job with the Ministry of Natural Resources because I needed a job so bad, and I lied about everything, and then had an anxiety attack after the interview and had to go to the library and learn about everything that I'd lied about because I started my work on Monday. It was a terrible experience, but I'm pretty sure none of those people are employed anymore, so we don't have to worry about that.
That is a great story about definitely about showing up and curiosity and learning. And I think there's great opportunity to really take that lesson and do some deep dives into learning. So thank you for sharing and being so honest about some of your experiences and difficulties, Jeanine, because that is what makes great leadership, is being able to laugh at ourselves, to be able to find new ways of looking at things, and yes, curiosity. Yay, team curiosity.
Gail, thank you so much for having me on the show today. I know you are one of those people, I'm sure, that we could spend hours talking about anything, and the conversation just will continue to drift into new topics. So one of the things I think I'll challenge both of us on next time is let's find something that we can get a little more in depth on, which will avoid us doing this if we can. Because I know we both have lots to share, and we're both eager to share it. And more importantly, if somebody else can learn from my experiences personally, I'm grateful to be able to share that. So thank you for this opportunity too.
Thank you for coming out today, because I know it was great for people to be able to see you in your own
in my natural element.
In your natural element, yes. So I know you're off to moderate a panel, correct?
Yeah, I'm participating in moderating a really exciting panel in the Future of Automation show that's being put on by Automation Magazine and the Annex Business Media Group. And that's going to take up most of my afternoon. And then for those who are involved, we're having another discussion about the border challenges also, and the discoveries and impact that we can have in hopefully moving the needle forward with respect to COVID policy and border challenges. So listen, I implore anybody who's interested in mold making and automation, get involved with both of these organizations. We have a lot on the go right now, and we're we're running. We're absolutely running to add value. We're running to make a difference, and we're running to promote the awesomeness and the importance of both of these sectors. So connect with us any way you can, learn more, and you'll be seeing more and more information show up as we release information and improve our website too.
Yes, thank you. And I'm going to let you go so you can go off, get ready for your next event.
Absolutely. Again, fellow redhead in arms, I applaud.
Ciao.
Ciao, Bella.
Well, that was great. Thanks. So great having Jeanine here as a guest today. She's off. She has a very busy world. And while we talked a lot about digital and social media and what's happening with the organization, there is also a lot more going on in terms of other items that they're working on the border, looking at innovation in both mold making and in Automate Canada. So I encourage you to go check out Jeanine, connect with her, learn more about the organization, and please, if you're not a member, you may want to definitely consider becoming a member, because there are many perks and information that you have access to once you join as a member. And there's a lot of information out there about both organizations. So if you check on the social media and the website, I know there's lots of changes ahead, and hope you can sign up for the digital training that I will be doing with my company, Gale Now, and look forward to seeing you there and looking for lots of participation. If nothing else, it's a great place to network in the comments. And we'll also post the video that was done about CAMM and Automate Canada, the people who make things that make things. So there's lots of exciting, you may not have realized it if you're in general manufacturing, about the people behind the scenes making the tools and the automation. So, okay, everybody, have a great day. And more upcoming live shows. I have some interesting people coming up that I'm going to be featuring, some people that I've connected with from the TikTok world that are really deciding to show up in the world. So stay tuned. There'll be more things over the next few weeks. So thanks everyone for tuning in, and we will see you soon.